In this video, we'll be replacing the fuel pump in this 2005 Honda Element. The process will be the same for 2003 through 2011. Your fuel pump is located underneath the rear section of your floor. You will need to remove the rear seat tracks and floor mat. We're going to disconnect our negative battery terminal. It's going to be a 10 millimeter. And we don't need to fully take that nut off, we just need to get it loose enough so we can remove the terminal and move it aside so it doesn't make contact with that terminal while we're working. So the first thing we're going to do to get to our fuel pump is open our hatch. Lower our bottom gate. And now we have access to our spare tire or our rear trunk floor. We're going to push down on this lever here, grab our handle, pull the floor up and out. So we're going to start here. We have a couple of push clips along the back edge of our floorboard. Just going to use a panel tool, try and get under here and pop those clips up. And then our last one over on this side. So the next thing we're going to do is remove our seat. So our seats are already in the folded up position. We're going to unfold them by grabbing the latch down the bottom here, open it up, and we're going to disconnect our seat from our handlebar or our grab bar up top, and let our seat rotate down into position. Now we don't need it to lock into position, we just need it down. If we follow the seat up to the interior panel here, you'll see your hinge for the seat and you'll see a plastic cover. A little tab on the plastic cover. We're going to pull that tab in and fully remove our plastic cover. Once you've done that, you now have access to the interior hinge and the track that your seat rides on. So we're going to pull this lever and work our seat out of the track. Now, if we want to, for ease of removal, we can pull this little pull cord here and fold our seat up. And we can remove it folded, or we can leave it down and remove it opened up. So we're going to leave it open, and we're actually going to rotate it so that our hinge on the inside is facing upwards, so we're not doing any damage to the bottom of the vehicle or the bottom of our sill panel, dragging it out. And then go ahead and remove your seat. Now that we have our rear seat removed on our driver's side, we're going to go ahead and start to remove this inside bottom trim panel. We're going to start back here, Phillips head screw. And from here, we're going to continue to move along at this height. We're going to move down in sections. Straight across underneath our seat belt is a little cover. Inside here, we're going to pop that cover open with a small pick tool. The small pick tool doesn't work. You can use a small little pocket flathead screwdriver. And there will be a Phillips screw in there. If you can't get this Phillips screw all the way out, feel free to leave it in there loose and close that cover back up. Moving across, at that level we have no more screws. Moving down behind our seat track, where our seat was, we'll have one more right here. Moving across towards the back, right about in the middle of this panel, you'll find one more little cover. A little small pick. And there'll be a Phillips screw hiding in there. Now this screw is a little long to leave in there and close the cover on it, so we'll take this one out. And moving across to the back, our tailgate area, there's no more screws at this level. But if we move straight down to just about the floor level on the inside, you'll see this little silver hook or silver clasp. Inside there, it's going to be one Phillips screw. That whole pocket may come out, as ours did, with that Phillips screw. We'll go ahead and put this aside. If we continue to move across, we see our strut access cover. Directly next to that is another one of those silver hooks here with the Phillips screw inside. We'll remove that as well. And again, this whole piece may come out, or the screw may come out. We'll set this piece aside. Now there's nothing behind here that we need to remove as far as screws, but we can take this cover off if you decide to. Now so far, we have one other panel up top here. It doesn't need to come off, but just to show you that there's nothing behind there. This may pop off while you remove your panel. From that panel, we're going to move straight down. We're going to find our first plastic clip into the floor. We'll go ahead and remove that. And if we follow that again to the rear, we'll have one more of those clips. Now if you give this panel a light tug, you should find that most of it seems free. And we have one more here behind this hook. This one's going to be a little bit deeper in. Our seat belt here on the bottom, our metal bracket for our seat belt, is actually on top of and pinching down this plastic panel. So what we're going to do is remove this bottom seat belt bolt. It's going to be a 14 millimeter. Now you can take it out all the way if you decide to. We will, just to show you. But if you have it about this far and spin it, you'll have access to remove this panel. And we'll take it out all the way so you can see a little clearer. So now, our panel here is free. Now you remember, our goal is to get our carpet up and rolled back. So, do we need to remove this panel all the way? No. Is this enough to get our carpet out? Probably. So the next piece we have to deal with is our sill plate here. It is covering and attached to our back trim panel. So we're going to need to remove this. To remove this, we're going to need to remove or move our seat track cover. We're going to use a panel tool, get in underneath that seat track cover, pop up the clips holding it to the sill. Now this seat track cover doesn't necessarily need to come out of the vehicle, but it needs to be up about this high and disconnected from the sill. Now the sill plate, take the same tool and get underneath an area of our sill plate here and pop upwards. We're going to release some clips that are down into the vehicle body. We're going to do that all the way around. Now this sill drops down into the footwell area, and because of that there are some clips facing outwards. So we're going to pry up our sill plate here to release all of our clips and release it from our rear panel. Once we do that, we're going to work up front. I'm going to pop this up a little more, and then we're going to work towards pushing our front of the sill plate inwards to release those clips. So now that we've got most of our sill plate free, we have a couple of clips here facing outwards through the sill plate into the vehicle. We're going to push inwards here to release those clips. Once those clips are released, we should be able to rotate our sill plate off. These are the clips. Here's your clip in the driver's side footwell facing in. And we can set this panel aside. These are the clips. Here's your clip in the driver's side footwell facing in. And we can set this panel aside. So now that we have our sill plate out, we have our door gasket. It comes to an end underneath our sill plate. We're going to grab that gasket. We're going to lift and pull straight up and off of that door seam. We're going to come up to about the break in the plastic here. And we're going to take this and just rest it out of our way, right about here. If you decide to put your gasket here instead of here or somewhere else, just make sure you do not close your door onto that gasket. So now what we're going to do inside here is try and pop out and move out our interior panel. Use a panel tool and just see if we can get some leverage to move that out of the way. Now that looks pretty good. What we can see now is underneath here, there looks to be no more clips on our interior mat. So we can now try and work our mat out from underneath this panel and get access to our fuel. So the next step we have to do is remove our trim underneath our rear seat. Now this piece here is actually held in by a clip. We're going to use a panel tool, just pop out that clip. We come along here to the driver's side of that panel. It's going to be held in by a push pin here. We're just going to get underneath here, pop it up. And now we should be able to work this panel up and out. So we have one more clip up front here, and this clip is actually not in correctly, so it's stuck. We're just going to take a pry bar and see if we can get that stuck clip out. There we go. So this clip was stuck sideways. It should be straight up and down. And that's how the clip should be. We can take this panel, put it aside, and we can now work on removing and rolling back our carpet or our mat. If you decide to, you can remove your center console, make it a lot easier. We'll remove it. It's held in front by two push clips. You're going to need to pull your e-brake Get underneath the front and pop up the 2 clips and then slide forward and off. All right, you might come to a point where you need to lower your e-brake. And you can remove your center console. And set that aside. So now what we can do is we can come right over to the middle here behind where our center console was, and we can remove this 1 push clip holding our mat down. So now what we need to do is take this portion, or the driver's side portion of our rear mat, pull it out from underneath this panel, and roll it over to the passenger side. Our fuel pump access is right in this area. So we're going to start back here by our strut. We're going to pull our mat out from underneath. And we're going to get to a point here where it's a little bit too far underneath this panel, so we'll have to start rolling it out. So we're going to pull our panel out and we'll start feeding or rolling our floor mat under it. Once we get that done, we can lift up our floor mat. And there's our fuel pump. So now that we have access to pull our floor mat over towards the passenger side, we're going to do just that. I'm going to pull it over. So now that we have access to our fuel pump access door, we're going to take out our 4 Phillips screws. Now there will probably be a little bit of an adhesive down underneath this to keep us sealed and keep this lid down. So we'll see if we can pry this up. There we go. So now that we're under our access door and have access to our fuel pump assembly, we have 2 connections here. One is going to be your fuel, one is going to be an electrical connector. We're going to start by removing the electrical connection. There's going to be a tab on the passenger side. I'm going to push in that tab and pull up the connector. I'm going to use a small panel tool here to squeeze that tab. Now this electrical connection, we're going to try and keep it out of the way and clear of this fuel pump assembly, so we'll tuck it down and under there where we can get to it. And now we have our fuel hose. We have a security or safety lock on it. We're going to have to squeeze this lock and separate the hose. Before we do that, let's put down a little spill protection. There will be some fuel in this line. So when we disconnect that line, we're going to rest it right into our absorbent pad here. And then we'll just let it drain for a minute or 2. We're going to use a pair of panel clips here, panel pliers, squeeze that lock, and separate our hose. So now that our line is mostly clear of fuel, we're going to tuck that line out of the way the best we can. Try not to bend it or kink it. So it's only going to go so far. So we're going to have to move and work around that. You also don't want to get any debris inside the end of this line. So what I'm going to do to keep this line back is use a rag to keep that line pushed backwards. And we can remove our absorbent pad from here, and we're going to set up a few absorbent pads next to the pump. We're going to be removing this cap or this lock. We're going to pull our pump straight up and out, drain whatever fuel's left in that assembly, and then remove that pump from the vehicle. So to remove our fuel pump, we need to remove this top lock. You can see it has ribs on it. You can use a flathead screwdriver and a small hammer and knock this around to loosen it up. Also, there is a tool meant just for this. We're going to opt for the tool. We have it preset here for our lock. Now you can see this tool made removing this lid very easy. It's also going to make installing the new lid very easy. So there's your lock. And now our fuel pump is in the tank. So at this point what you want to do is make sure that there's no debris around the outside. So vacuum it up, clean it up, because when you lift this out, you will have an open hole into your fuel tank. You're going to want to make sure nothing falls in there. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and pull our pump up and out. So there you go. Once you get your pump free, you're going to lift it straight up and out, and what will probably happen is that gasket will come out with it. And then you want to be careful of your sending unit or your float that is still in the tank. You're going to have to angle it out and pull your float out. Now at this point you're going to want to let whatever fuel is left in your pump drain back into the tank. So now we're going to remove our fuel pump. And for us, we're going to put this outside and let it dry off. So your fuel pump's going to come just like this with your float unattached. We're going to put it right into here. It's only going to go in one way. You're just going to press in, and then you're going to click it. You're going to press and click it into these two tabs. And that's it. That float is now locked into position. The last thing we're going to assemble is going to be our gasket. All right, so your gasket, the opening is going to go down and the flat is going to go up. So we're going to feed this onto the pump now before we put it in the tank. You will have to work it over the pump. Just take your time, work it over that slowly. You can put it on before you put your float on. Makes it a little easier, but if you do it this way, try not to bend that float arm at all. And work it right up to the top. Now your fuel pump is spring loaded. So when we put this into the tank, it's going to be too tall. We're going to set our gasket down onto the rim of the tank, and then we're going to press the top down into position. So now that we have our gasket and our float installed, let's put it in. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure we're in the same orientation as the old one. Plug to the passenger side and barb here for our fuel hose to the rear. We're going to angle our float in first and then lower our pump into position. Now we're seated on the bottom of the tank. So now we can go ahead and put our gasket on. So now we've moved our gasket down from the top of the pump, and we're going to start to seat our gasket into the actual tank. which makes the seal for our pump. And once you have your gasket in position and pushed down flush against the top of the tank, again, we're going to reorient our pump. We are going to press that pump all the way down to seat onto that gasket. Make sure everything clears and there's no hang-ups. We can then take our new lock, lower it onto the pump, and start to thread that on by hand. Once you've got it started, let's go ahead and tighten it down with this tool. Once you've got your lid nice and tightened down, go ahead and remove your tool, and we can start to reinstall our lines. So before we discard our old pump, we're going to need to remove this lock. I'm going to use a pick tool and pry up the two sides here. We're holding our lock on. You want to be delicate with this because you do not have another to replace it with. There's your lock. We're just going to slide this right onto the new pump. So the first thing we're going to do is remove our yellow stopper here on our hose line. We're going to take our lock and press it into position. Press it till you hear a click. Give it a little tug backwards, make sure it doesn't come off. Once that's done, we're going to install our plug first. And we tucked our plug down under here. Just go ahead and grab that, pull it back into position. What you want to do here is make sure that this plug face is clean and free of any debris or corrosion. Everything looks great. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Push down so you hear a click. And then lastly, we have our fuel. We're going to take our rag out, take our fuel line. Make sure you give it a look inside. Make sure no debris has fallen in there. If everything looks good, you have a notch on both sides. You're going to need to align your lock into that notch and press them together. Give it a little tug rearward, make sure it's locked into position. Once you've done that, we can reinstall our cover and work back towards putting the interior back in. And now we can reinstall our cover. Sit our cover back down. On the ends of your cover, you'll see a hole for the screw and two little locking or alignment tabs. All the way around, you're going to want to make sure that those tabs are in and set in. Once you've done that, go ahead and reinstall our screws. So we're going to do it in a crisscross to make sure this doesn't shift around or move. So now that we have our cover for our fuel pump in place, we can take our floor mat, roll this back out. We have a few clips to put back in place and a few panels to put back in place. But before we do that, we're going to work out some of these kinks here. Press our floor mat back around our track. Loosely get this area back in place. Big thing we have to fight, big thing we have to work around is getting our mat underneath this interior panel. We're going to roll our interior panel back and down, pull our panel up and over. Now this is where removing this panel fully will make this part a lot easier, but you don't necessarily have to. Now this part here is a weak point. Just be careful not to flex and bend this too much. We're going to work on this back corner here. We're just going to fold this up a little bit, tuck it down underneath our interior panel. And we have, again, a few clips to put in place back here, but we're going to start in the front and work our way back. So the first thing we're going to do is put our clip back in through our mat. So now we're going to reinstall our piece that goes underneath the front seat, our trim piece here. We're going to focus on the inside. We're not going to clip in the outside or the driver's side of this because our sill plate goes underneath it. So we're going to focus on the inside, line that up. Now we'll work on our center console. Now we're going to put our center console in. It's going to go in the back first, so it's going to go back down and in. And our emergency brake will need to go through the hole, so it'll need to be lifted slightly. And once we get that into position, we will push our two front clips into place. Once you have your center console in place, you can go ahead and lower your e-brake. So now we have our door gasket. We're going to need to put our door gasket back in place before we put our sill panel down, as this sits underneath our sill panel. Easiest way to do this is put a slight bend into it and roll it onto that seam. And when you get down to the bottom, come back, just give it a nice little tap all the way up to where you started. Make sure it's seated all the way in. Now we're going to move on to our driver's side door sill. Our driver's side door sill wraps down into the footwell area. Because of that, we're going to have one inward or outward facing clip. What we're going to do is wrap this down into position, press down, seating these clips, and then we'll move on to this clip here. So first thing we're going to do is lower this into position and rotate it into the footwell area. And the next hurdle we're going to face is this plastic piece here that we installed earlier around our seat track. This piece is going to need to go on top of and click into our sill plate. So what we have is a panel tool. We're just going to work that plastic piece up on top of our sill plate here. All right, we have a key area to look at here, as well as here, and one more up front. We're going to make sure these areas line up. And you can see we're a little bit forward. We'll start to bring this backwards a little bit. Once we have our areas here lined up, we can start to press down and lock in our clips across the top. Once we get to the back, this is where our sill plate is going to connect into our rear panel. I want to make sure the clip is lined up, mating those two together. Click down into place, as well as our last clip here. Now our sill plate on the top surface is installed. We can now move on to our seat track cover here, which will clip into it. Once that's done, we have one more clip inside the footwell area we're going to have to push in. And we just grab that and squeeze that clip into place. That's it. So now that our mat is back down and lined up, we'll start to put our clips back in. And now from here, we'll put our seat belt back in place. Now our seat belt is going to go into position here. And we're going to make sure we keep an eye on this front tab here that's going to need to lock into the body. And now we can put our cover back onto our strut access. So now we have a couple of plastic clips that you're going to go into the bottom here. Just going to push them straight in. And then coming a little rearward here, we have one more. Push it straight in. And now while we're working in the back here, make it a little easier for us to move around, let's put our spare tire cover back in. It's going to slide into the back, lower down, and push to click in our lock here. So now we're going to start to reinstall our screws holding in our side trim piece here. We're going to start with these little latches, or we're going to start with this little latch. There is a tab on the back we'll have to align, and the screw that goes with it. All right, so moving up from our piece here, we're going to put in this screw. And then we're going to move across down to our seat belt area. We're going to put this plastic trim back on. And moving a little further across next to that, we have one more screw location here. Oh, right here, one more. And push and close your cap. Now if we go straight up in line with this, we have one more. But that one, we left the screw inside, so we'll use a small pocket screwdriver to open that cover. Grab our screw and put it back in. Close our cover. Moving rearward of that, we have this hanger here, which we're going to fold down, and our screw in behind here, and fold up your hanger. Going rearward of that, we have one more screw going in here. And if we follow this straight down, we have one more location with our silver piece here and our screw. We're going to take the screw out for this. We're going to put this piece in and align this tab. Now we're going to bring our rear seat back in. We're going to get it into position, and then we're going to work on putting our seat anchor into the track. So what we're going to do now is align our yellow notch here in with the front, and then we'll lower down the rear into the latch position here. So we're going to angle this up, bring our seat over, lower the front in and the rear down and push down. Once that's done, if you want to, you can raise the back of your seat. Reach underneath, pull out the bottom track, lower that down. So now what we're going to do is grab our rear seat back release. We're going to pull that, push our seat back down. We're going to take our plastic trim cover, put that into position, pushing straight down, and then push in to lock it in. And we're going to grab our seat from the side and rotate our seat up to the side of the vehicle. We're going to close our seat up to the side of the vehicle. We're going to grab our latch and hook it onto our handle. There you have it, folks. And now that we're wrapped up in the back, we can put our battery terminal back on. We're going to take our negative terminal. We're going to make sure that our terminal on the battery is free and clear of any debris. We're going to set that terminal down, push it all the way down with a 10mm wrench, 10mm ratchet. Go ahead and tighten that up. Now you don't need to over crank this, you just need to get it tight enough to where that terminal doesn't move around on you. That's it.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.